Welcome everyone to today's EASE webinar. It's one of the many webinars we have organized during the years, and I'm looking forward also to the next webinars and events in February, March, and April. It is soon our spring series of webinar. Today's webinar is entitled Walking the Walk, Assessing Our Commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I will be moderator of this webinar. My name is Iva Grabarić Andonovski. As you can see on my screen, I'm the EASE Vice President, EASE Croatian Regional Chapter Chair, co-chair of our EASE Environment and Sustainability Committee, and editor of Food Technology and Biotechnology journal published by the University of Zagreb Faculty of Food Technology and Biotechnology. My two guests and dear friends and speakers today are Jo Wixon. She is a HESi SDG Publishers Compact Fellow, member of our Environmental Sustainability Committee, and Director of External Analysis at Wiley. Hello, Jo, and thank you for joining us from the conference. So busy day for you. And we have Rachel Martin, who is also a HESi SDG Publishers Compact Fellow and member of our Environmental Sustainability Committee. She is the Global Director of Sustainability at Elsevier, STM Social Responsibility Committee Chair, and UK Book Industry Communications Green Supply Chain Committee Chair. I think this is the most complicated title I ever read in my life. But certainly you have two persons who are very skillful and very well acquainted with the UN SDG Publishers Compact, STM initiatives, and HESi and EASE activities regarding sustainability in publishing. So this webinar is being recorded, and for questions and answers later, I ask you to write your questions in a Q&A or comments in chat, and later we will try to address them as much as possible. So today's program is, first I will tell you a little bit about our Environment and Sustainability Committee work. Then Jo will present the results of our EASE HESi survey on UN SDG Publishers Compact and EASE Environmental Manifesto. I will then I will do the presentation of the parts related to the EASE Manifesto, because I want to show you on the example of journal I am editing, how you can apply it to your workflows and policies. Rachel will then present us the STM roadmap and tools for editors, and we will have a discussion at the end. So regarding our Environment and Sustainability Committee, I'm very happy to run it together with my co-chair Hasib Irfanullah from Bangladesh. We have 10 very active members, of which 3 are from the United Kingdom: Alistair Brown, Jo Wixon, and John Ray. We have also 2 members from Croatia, Lovor Kačaja and Tibor Komar. Dana Compton from the United States, Ruhi Ghosh from India, and last but not least, Rachel Martin from the Netherlands. And together we are trying to provide you as much information and activities as possible, and to help you all to reach sustainable development goals. Our committee was established in 2020. The first initiative was to actually create our own environmental policy and take a baseline of our 10-year activities. Later in 2021, we have signed both as an association and as European Science Editing Journal, the UN SDG Publishers Compact, which was launched in 2020. You will see and heard about it later. At 15th EASE conference, which was in June 2021, we had it focused on the role of editors in promoting sustainability in scholarly publishing. And parallelly at the conference, we presented Environmental Sustainability and Scientific Publishing, a manifesto, which is a set of recommendations that you can do as journal editors to reach sustainable development goals. We have also launched that year our EASE Virtual Forest, which you can see if you click on ease.org.uk website. Under Virtual Forest, you can see the position of 1,856 trees planted so far. We plant 3 for each EASE membership, conference attendance, and award winner. We have also helped or initiated together with UK Health Alliance on Climate Change, the joint publishing of joint editorial, which was published in advance to COP26 conference by medical and biomedical journals, who actually urged the governments to take more actions to reduce the impact of the climate change. In 2022, we have started our collaboration with UN SDG Publishers Compact Working Group and conducted, together with Higher Education and Sustainability Initiative Fellows, UN SDG Publishers Compact Workshop and the survey. You will hear about the results of our survey later. We have also participated in Sustainable Solutions Summit and also joined the initiative to publish joint editorial with UK Health Alliance on climate change in advance to the COP27 conference, which was more focused on the climate changes and its effect on Africa. In 2023, we have organized together with STM, HESi and SDG Publishers Compact Fellows Sustainable Solutions Summit. We had several speakers from our committee. Hasib was and Rachel were part of this session together with me. And we also were included in the ISMTE 2023 global event with our session on harnessing leadership and accountability for a sustainable publishing industry. We have also organized the session together with the Croatian Association for Scholarly Communication, or ZNAC in Croatian, at the PubMed conference in September in Zadar, about the environmental awareness and sustainability in scholarly communication, during which publishers and institution representatives and organization representatives share their best practices regarding sustainability in scholarly communication. So that is about the work of our committee, and I want to now share the floor with Joe, who will show us the results of our HESi survey, which was done to establish the impact of the SDG Publishers Compact and the EASE Environmental Manifesto. And I would like to ask you, Joe, to share some background and history of it and the results of that survey.
Thank you, Eva, for the kind introduction and invitation to share the learnings from our joint survey. So, in terms of our aims, as part of our collaboration between EASE and the HESi SDG Publishers Compact Fellows, we developed this survey to assess progress made by signatories of the SDG Publishers Compact compared to non-signatories, also to detect obstacles preventing other publishers or journals from signing the compact, and to assess awareness and implementation of the EASE Environmental Manifesto. The International Publishers Association launched their first annual survey of signatories of the SDG Publishers Compact at about the same time. So that means we're able to compare our results to theirs and discuss our findings in more depth in an article that has been submitted to European Science Editing. Wish us luck. Thank you, Eva. Next slide, please. So first, some background on our respondents. The majority have headquarters located in Europe, likely driven by us reaching out to the EASE membership. And thank you very much if any of you on the call were kindly part of filling out the survey for us. Most of our respondents, about 67%, answered on behalf of journals. And this was even more so, as you can see in the lower of the two pies there, for the non-signatories of the compact at 74%, whereas signatories were a more even mix of institutions and journals at the top. Most respondents, 66%, represented smaller 0 to 49 staff organisations. And again, this was even more the case for non-signatories, where the majority were from small organisations, where signatories are an even split for the signatories, quite a difference there on the upper pie, with very few medium-sized organisations. So our demographics then are very different to those of the SDG Publishers Compact annual survey, where all respondents were signatories, and at that time, 70% of signatories were publishers. So we could expect that their respondents are similarly predominantly publishers. So if I can move on to the next slide, please, Eva. So our first set of questions were designed to assess awareness of these different initiatives. 78% of respondents were aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, but only 53% were aware of the SDG Publishers Compact. Of those who answered the questions about the EASE Environmental Manifesto, 56% were aware of it. This reveals that more work is needed to spread the word and raise awareness of the SDG Publishers Compact, of the EASE Environmental Manifesto, and also to support those who might become signatories of the compact. So if we could just move on to the next slide, please, Eva. So only 22% of our respondents had signed the compact, which gave us a good opportunity to understand more about those non-signatories who answered and where they stand. So one of our first questions was to ask those non-signatories who had no current plan to sign what was holding them back. And here we found that lack of awareness came out as the top reason for not signing the compact, confirming the earlier finding that more work is needed to spread the word and raise awareness. But beyond just raising awareness of those two initiatives, it's also clear that we need to make clear that it's not restricted to publishers and can be signed by journals and other stakeholders in the communication industry. We actually had a couple of journals saying we're not a publisher, so they'd read the name of the initiative with yes and hadn't realised that it opens its arms somewhat wider than that. So that's our kind of main take home from this is really to work on awareness. Thank you, Eva. For the next slide, we're looking now at the focused sustainable development goals that had been selected by respondents. And we found that these, as you can see in the table, we have a rank for our survey and a rank for the IPA SDG Publishers Compact survey there on the right. So you can see that generally, they were largely similar. The key differences, however, were that our respondents ranked quality education top, whereas the compact survey respondents put climate action top. Good health and well-being ranked notably higher in our survey, whereas responsible consumption and production and decent work and economic growth ranked higher in the compact survey. It could be that our journal respondents answered for their academic institution when thinking of quality education, and perhaps for their journal scope when thinking of good health and well-being, whereas our publisher respondents may have set some of their priorities with their role as employers and businesses in mind. So if I can move on again, Eva, thank you. So then we delved deeper into the progress made on the 10 commitments that people sign up to when joining the SDG Publishers Compact. So as you can see by the difference in the two, thank you, Eva. As you can see by the quite different colouring of the two charts on the right, this revealed some important differences between signatories on the top and non-signatories on the bottom. And it highlights areas where more support and resources are needed, particularly in the areas of reporting on progress, raising awareness among suppliers, and dedicating budget and resources to this work. For our signatories group up at the top there, we saw similar results to the SDG Publishers Compact annual survey whenever the questions were similar. So for commitment 10, they saw 86% of people compared to our 80% who had taken action on at least one SDG. On commitment 4, they saw 68% compared to our 60% had appointed a dedicated lead person to promote the Sustainable Development Goals. And on commitment 2, 53% in the IPA survey compared well with our 55% regarding taking action to acquire and promote SDG relevant content. So we did get quite similar answers from our signatories as were seen in the main survey. However, in the IPA survey, 72% of respondents said they had dedicated budget, and that was a marked difference from our study where quite a few of our respondents had been able to set a dedicated budget aside. While the advancements that you can see with the much more blue coloration in the signatories chart could be explained by half of them being larger publishers and organisations who were implementing the SDGs in their policies and practices, we would also argue that signing up to the SDG Publishers Compact is a driver of progress because it focuses the efforts of an organisation or a journal on those 10 commitments. So we would encourage any publishers, publishing associations or journals, regardless of their size, that have not yet signed the SDG Publishers Compact to consider taking this positive step towards supporting the SDGs. And now I'll hand back to you, Eva, who will talk about our findings and next steps regarding the EASE Environmental Manifesto.
Thank you, Joe, for this analysis, and apologies, my mouse is radically functioning today, so he jumped forward. These are, I find these are the results of our survey quite relevant, especially taking into account that I'm also editor of a small academic journal. So it's interesting to see how well we are positioned as a journal in respect to the larger publishers, I would say, predominantly surveyed in the IPA survey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, once again. So I will talk about the part which was related in our survey regarding EASE Environmental Manifesto, where are our members and other members of other organizations who are involved in the survey, where are their activities, whether they are monitoring their activities, what you can do as an editor of the journal. I will show you the example of our Journal for Technology and Biotechnology. So you can see from this slide, which is showing actually the activities listed in the EASE Manifesto checklist, which you can do as the editor of the journal. And regarding the complete survey, we had unfortunately lesser response this part of the survey, 44 to 46 respondents. Most probably because a lot of them were not EASE members, so perhaps they find this part not that relevant for them. But regarding awareness of 27 EASE members who answered these questions, 20 of them were aware of the EASE Environmental Manifesto, and 7 non-members were also aware of it. So we can say that the majority is aware of the manifesto and that we done a good job regarding the promotion and visibility of it. As you can see, these activities which are proposed in the EASE Manifesto, I'm not sure whether you can read it because of the smaller font, but first of all, first of the activities that is recommended is to have a written environmental policy. As you can see, that is something that is not implemented, since blue areas are showing completely implemented activities, light blue considerably implemented, yellow shows that is sometimes implemented, orange is for rarely, red for almost never, and dark red for not at all. So you can see that a lot of respondents were answered that they actually don't have written environmental policy, and nor there are actually we can say that almost never, or they don't have it. But for appointing a dedicated environmental officer, it is also something that we should be concerned about, because a lot of journals responded that they don't have a dedicated environmental officer who is in charge of the SDG progress and the implementation of SDGs in the journal workflows or publisher workflows. Regarding consideration of the implication of printed versus digital publication, that is implemented to some extent, as well as minimizing environmental impact of print and distribution. Use of energy efficient appliances at the offices is something that is also considerably implemented, or to some part completely implemented. And the things that are mostly implemented are recycling at the offices, using reusable cutlery and crockeries, and also, as you can see, facilitating working from home. And to a lesser extent, the respondents said that they are offering locally produced and seasonal food, or facilitate sustainable travel options. And regarding energy saving features like high-grade insulation, solar panels, etc., only a smaller percentage is actually implementing this part, as well as publishing articles on sustainability or climate change, or promoting general sustainable practices. So you can see that most implemented actions were facilitate working from home and recycling at the offices, and least implemented written environmental policy and dedicated environmental officer. That is something that raises concern, because these parts are something on which you can influence as the editor. For example, you cannot, if you are editor of a journal which is published by a larger institution, you don't have much to say about installing energy efficient appliances or having energy saving features, as you all know. But if we are talking about our editorial policies and strategies, written environmental policy, dedicated officer, promoting the content of the journal on sustainability or climate changes, this is something that you can have most impact on, and which I urge you to consider while running your own journals. I also want to thank to the other members of the survey team, Nikita Ladd from George Mason University, Dana Compton, she is a member of HESi UNSDG Publishers Compact Fellows, and together with Joe and Mary, our secretary of EASE, we all designed and conducted and analyzed our survey. And special thanks to Vicky Garden from Wiley and STM, who put a lot of very useful comments in designing the questionnaire, and Tihana Rubic from University of Zagreb, Faculty of Humanities and Social Studies, who helped us in organizing the workshop. I would like to show you now on the example of our journal, Food Technology and Biotechnology. As I told you, our journal is published by the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Food Technology and Biotechnology. That is a smaller institution, and we belong to the groupation of smaller academic journals. We are in Diamond Open Access, so regarding sustainability and dedicating a budget, it is much harder to be sustainable when you are not neither charging authors nor readers. We have receiving governmental funds in the previous year. In this year, this financing model has changed, but it is done not directly by the Ministry of Science and Education, but via our institution and the grants that they are signing with the Ministry of Science and Education. And actually, we considered to sign UNSDG Publishers Compact as soon as it was launched, but we managed to realize it in 2022 due to the changes of our management structure at our faculty. And when we signed the UN SDG Publishers Compact, if you are a signatory, then you know that you are can choose the targets to which you want to focus with the three on which you are most focused on. So we chose 7 SDGs with the most focus on SDG 9, which is industry, innovation and infrastructure, 12, which is responsible consumption and production, and 13, that is climate action. The reasons why we've chosen these with these 3 SDGs is that we are a faculty who has a strong collaboration with the industry, and also we are involved in many projects regarding responsible consumption and production, and we are as a journal publishing content on those topics. And also not only that we are considering the impact, how to reduce the climate change, as editors, we are also involved as a publisher in organization of conferences on green technologies, and we have published a lot of articles regarding green and sustainable processes in food industry and biotechnology. So that was something which was for us most natural to focus on those three SDGs. We have appointed environmental officer. We took a baseline of our activities, and we were specially focused since as EASE members, we were aware of the EASE Environmental Manifesto, and we were especially aware of the impact of printing a lot of material, which has an impact on climate, and sometimes is not justified because there are ways of organizing the exchange with other institutions electronically to distribute your materials electronically, etc. So we reduced the number of printed copies to those who are intended for subscribers to the printed edition, and for institutions that still want to have exchange of printed copies. And we have something which is called obligatory printed copies in Croatia, which you have to deposit in the national and university library. So our number of printed issues of the journals have reduced drastically. We also reduced in-person meetings and travelings. That was something which was more aligned with the COVID pandemic, but we also realized that it's much easier to organize editorial board meetings and to actually communicate much more efficiently electronically via Zoom predominantly, sometimes Microsoft Teams. So that was also our impact or reduced impact on or reduced carbon footprint. We switched to energy efficient appliances, LED bulbs. We have put recycled bins at the premises and using reusable material, and also promote consumption of local food and tap water. These 2 things are more related to the fact that we are part of the European Union, and that is something that is shown also in our EASE Environmental Manifesto part of the survey, because a lot of members from EASE are coming from European countries in which recycle is mandatory, and we have also switched to energy efficient appliances a couple of years ago, so it was much easier to do it. And Croatia is a country which has enough reserves of drinking water and resources of local food, so it was something that was quite easy to conduct or implement. And we also stimulate use of public transportation, cycling and walking, and we have introduced flexible working hours, so we can avoid rush hour, commuting during rush hours, and we enabled work from home. This was something that we needed to discuss with our institution, our publisher, of course, and to have agreement that allows us to do that. In 2023, apart from those activities which was mentioned from the previous year, we wanted to take things a step further and to see what can we do as journal to attract more people to supply our content, the content to our journal, which is SDG related. And not only that, but also to promote it among our readers, authors, and reviewers. So we have introduced in our online submission system the options for the authors to choose one of the SDGs or several SDGs related to their article. And we are putting the logotypes of these SDGs with the link to the targets of the SDGs at article level. And we are promoting that on social networks, both of our journal and our institution. For that, we needed to have approval. So we approached the UN SDG Publishers Compact team and asked them whether we can use these logotypes and the logo of SDG Publishers Compact in that way. And they asked us to send them an example of how we would like to do that. And then after reviewing or evaluation of our proposal, they granted us the right to use the logotypes in that way, just to put a notification, which is on the screen, not readable, but next to the logotypes, which says that this content is not delivered by the United Nations members, nor they are responsible for the content. So that was the only thing they asked us to do. So we are doing it constantly at each article at which SDGs are chosen to be relevant for that topic. And when we are promoting the articles on social networks, and that is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, recently we opened up the Instagram account, so we are not using it that much yet, but we will try to use it more frequently in future. And on LinkedIn, we are promoting the articles with those SDGs tags. We also published an editorial about the activities in issue 1 of that year, the previous year, to promote not only the fact that we signed the UN SDG Publishers Compact, but to be transparent in the way how we are conducting the activities. We are also posting all the activities at the website, so each one can track what we are doing each year. And we are considering much more than before, although I must admit that we have a lot of female scientists working as editors, field editors and reviewers for our journal, but we are trying to to introduce gender balance, so to have more or less equal number of men and women in appointing deputy editors, field editors, and reviewers. I must say that sometimes it is hard to detect the gender of the reviewers if they have not indicated in our online submission system, but we are at least trying to be as much fair or balanced as possible. So when we are talking about 10 action points that you are committing to when signing UN SDG Publishers Compact, we can say that our journal has implemented most of them. First of all, is committing to the SDGs. Then we are actively promoting and acquiring SDG content, annually reporting on progress towards SDGs, not only at our website, but also in the IPA survey. We have nominated a person who is promoting SDG progress. We are raising awareness and promoting SDGs among staff. We are less efficient in promoting it among suppliers. The reason is that our institution has some contracts, several year contracts with the suppliers, which were not during the negotiation. The SDGs were not taken that much into account, but we are revising it at the institutional level. So I hope that we will raise the awareness among them. Also, we are trying to do that at least. We are also promoting to customers and stakeholders the SDGs, and also organizing webinars and workshops and lectures about SDGs as the members of the Journal Editorial Office. We are collaborating with other signatories and organizations. Unfortunately, we don't have a dedicated budget that is related to the lack of finances and changes in a financing model, but we hope to perhaps apply for some grants in future, and we are definitely taking action on at least one goal. So our main obstacles, or not obstacles, but questions that we need to solve is to find the dedicated budget and to monitor the impact of the activities. We have PLAMIX metrics at the article level, so that is one way of tracking it, but we are in a need of some more, how should I say it, metrics which is more uniformed and more relevant for us in the future. So I will talking about metrics. We have a very good tool available, and that is STM Roadmap and Tools for Editors. And I would like to ask Rachel to talk a little bit about it. So thank you, Rachel. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. I love coming and talking about my favorite subject, sustainability, and more importantly, what are we going to do about it? So my focus is really on publishers and publishing, and really figuring out how do we get more understanding, more awareness, and more action around the Sustainable Development Goals. And maybe before I dive into what the STM, SDG roadmap's all about, it might be useful to kind of have a bit of a walk down memory lane, because if I think back to sort of 2018, which is when I started to really engage with the SDGs, in the publishing industry, we weren't so aware of what was going on. If we fast forward a few more years to 2020, it was where the UN actually kicked off the Decade of Action. The Decade of Action was when we already recognized that a lot more action was needed if we were going to get to that state by achieving the SDGs by the deadline of 2030. And when I went to industry conferences, when I looked in the publishing industry, not just academic publishing, but, book fairs, education, SDGs just weren't on the agenda. Now, 2020, for those who might remember, was when Black Lives Matters came to the forefront, and we started to really have a think of diversity and inclusion. And suddenly diversity and inclusion wasn't just about gender, it was also about ethnicity. It was also about, different elements to it. And we started to really ramp up what we meant by sustainability far more than what we had focused on. But we certainly didn't have panels discussing, the difference between print and digital. We weren't looking at climate. We weren't looking at environmental impact. And the feedback everybody told me at that stage was, Rachel, we're in publishing. We do this. This is just what we do. We automatically contribute to the SDGs. And it was a feeling, and I think a sentiment in around 2020, that this was a communications. This was a nice glossy brochure that you might put at the end of the year for your organization. And so 2020 for me was a big landmark, because that's when we launched the SDG Publishers Compact. And it did for the first time promote, which was amazing, right? You could make a commitment to SDGs and say, hey, these are really important. But it provided very generic, very high level action points. And this is really where you could actually start integrating sustainability in an organizational way. This was going beyond just having it as a marketing tool or a communications campaign, and really thinking about what does that mean. And you've just heard from Iva and Joe about how that's been integrated thus far moving forward. And one of the first signatories to the SDG Publishers Compact was actually STM. And for those who might not be familiar, STM is one of the leading associations for academic publishers. They have about 140 members. They cover about 21 countries. And their membership represents around about 60% don't quote me on that, of the global output of journal articles, and of course, thousands of research and textbooks and other outputs as well. And so them signing up, prioritizing SDGs was a big step forward. And what we wanted to do there was to say, okay, those 10 steps are great, but what does that actually mean? And we found that there was a lot more sort of build up that we needed. You just heard from Joe where you had to really take people from what is SDGs? What does it mean for me? What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to sign up to something. What does that all mean? And we wanted to kind of grease the wheels, make it very easy. And we thought a roadmap would be an excellent way of doing it. We convened experts across our academic publishing members to come together and help us create this SDG sustainability roadmap. And the idea here is that it provides inspiration, but support, really super practical stuff to kind of get you to think of how do you get started? So we've got a level 1 introduction and then moving on to level 2. And this really underpins STM's commitment, and I think they're the only association I'm aware of that are committed to getting 50% of their members signed up to the STM, the SDGs Publishers Compact. So that's an amazing commitment to make and to put resources behind this to make sure that members understand what it is and how they can be a part of it. If we go to the next slide, the roadmap simply has these 5 elements. So it starts with engage, which is looking at leadership. So in level 1, what tends to happen is that you have a very passionate person, and I've met loads of them over the course of the years, who wants to do something in their organization. How do you take that to the CEO? How do you take it to your leadership team? And this was really around creating very practical stuff. You know, there's a slide deck. How do you, if you manage to get into one of your management meetings, how can you present the SDGs? How do you present the SDG Publishers Compact? Accelerate was around publishing. How do you really look at your publishing portfolio? What kind of checklists might you need? We've got other programs such as Research for Life, which you might be able to look at. How do you evaluate that? How do you benchmark where you are? Advocate is where communications comes in and training. And this is not just about an external marketing campaign, communications internally. How do you tell people that you are signed up to this, that this is something that's important? How do you kind of get your organization behind it? Prioritization, of course, you can't solve the world. We all have our core strengths and we all need to be moving in the right direction. So how do you prioritize? How do you identify your strengths? How do you pick 1 or 2 of those SDGs and really move the needle? And of course, reporting, what does that look like? And some tips and tricks about how you might be scaling up that. So level 1 was very much get started. How do you get to, 0 to 100 where you can sign up to the compact? And level 2 is really around integration. So there we go back again through those 5 stages and we start thinking about things like, we need to engage, but now we don't need to engage the top level. We have their support. What we do need to do is make sure all your staff, all your colleagues, your editors understand that you've signed up and understand why it's important and start raising their awareness and understanding of the impact of SDGs within the organization. In terms of acceleration, you've already heard from Eva the example of using keywords during submissions. Those really practical examples come out there. And communications and training, again, making sure that you have senior leaders who are saying it and talking about it. And, we see a lot more sustainability panels being put together. We see a lot more advocacy than it was, 4 years ago where, we struggled to get on any sort of programming. And prioritization, we're starting to think through what does that mean. You saw that there was a unique set of SDGs that academic publishing and editors all sort of prioritize. And so how do we move the needle around that? And we're starting to think about reporting. We're now in the process of thinking about what's next. So we've done level 1, which was about getting started. Level 2, which is about integration. How do we start making sure SDGs, sustainable development, climate, D&I are just naturally part of what we do. And level 3 is really going to be concentrating on really practical case studies about how do we showcase what concretely has been done and that has moved the needle in those really those priority SDGs that we all are aligning around. And the other really exciting piece of work is around reporting. The whole thing here is that everybody's journey on sustainable development will depend on where you're based, what type of organization you are, what type of role you might have. And so everybody's journey is going to look different. So now we need to kind of come up with how we're going to benchmark success. How do we get to a stage where we look back in 2030 and we look back to this moment here in 2024 and we say, yeah, we really moved the needle on gender equality. We really moved the needle on climate action. And what does that look like? And those are the conversations that we're starting to see at the International Publishers Association, that we're starting to see in our national association, so in America, in the US, in Canada. They all create a lot of D&I data. What does that mean? How do we pass data to how do we get that together? And how do we start benchmarking and thinking about progress? So exciting times, but it's a journey, and we're very much about collaboration, inclusivity. So if you do have ideas, if you do have great examples, we're always lovely to hear from you all, and we'd love to be able to integrate it into our roadmaps and our journeys as we go on. And I'm going to stop there.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Rachel. Yes, that's something that is very relevant for us, as our survey has pinpointed the problems of not only financing those activities, but that I would say it's not that a big problem, because you can do a lot of activities without a lot of finances, but to monitoring and how to organize your workflows, that was something that is, I think, journal editors are struggling most with. So for us, it was like, okay, we should, we want to join, we want to jump in on that train, but how to join, what first steps to take. So it was relevant for us to have UN SDG publishers compact activities and EASE checklist, so we can actually see what are the smaller steps that we can take, and then to consider some larger scale implementation. I see that there is a lot of I will stop sharing now, just because my mouse is really I'm trying to replace him and he is aware of it. So he's really frisky today. And when I point on chat, everything is going all the way. So I can see that there are a lot of there is a lot of activities in the chat. Just to scroll down a little bit. Okay, so
Eva,
yeah.
Sorry, can I interrupt a minute? Eva,
Yes,
just take Krista's question first. I've just promoted her to a panelist.
Oh yes, Krista, please feel free.
Sorry, Mary just suggested and this is a little bit tangential to the discussion maybe, but I've been watching for a while that there's more and more electricity being used by these storage technologies, you know, and you have to use the cloud with your Apple, and you have to use the cloud with your Google, and it seems like there's no way to control this consumption. And I was just wondering, I feel like in North America, it's like the car bloat problem. You know, they're making the cars larger and larger, even though we all know it's wrong. Is there any control on this storage problem recently? Yeah, maybe you don't know. It's a bit tangential to this discussion. Maybe other people in the meeting know. Sorry, but Mary said to ask anyway, so there I did. Just wanted to hear about that.
I know within the publishing context. So we've been looking at, well, a lot of publishers have been mapping their carbon footprints. Physical books and journals still outrank digital, like almost 20-1. So, you know, if you have a print element of your journal, it is a huge, huge impact when we're talking about the publishing side. So you will see a lot more focus, I think, on academic publishers in that space. There have been a collaborative project called D-Impacts, which is looking at the digital impacts and scoping out what does that look like for publishing. Because one of the biggest things, I mean, this is, you know, just for publishing, of course, but if you think about journals, what does that look like? What's the life cycle analysis of a journal article? And what are we going to account for? And what can we drive behavior around? And then what we're finding there is that, you know, we don't own servers as such, right? So the cloud is about services, and it's very difficult to then allocate that back to an individual journal or to an individual article. And that's where it's going to be a little bit tricky. The other thing I think you've got to think about, both for paper manufacturers and for like Amazon and Microsoft, is that they're well ahead of some of the other carbon data maturity. So the way that they're framing the conversation and the way that they're directing the conversation is also influencing how this is developing, right? So, you know, Amazon chooses what they'd like to disclose, both in terms of physical book sales, but also in terms of data services as well. So, you know, how do we get that together? And I think projects like the D-Impacts, STM is just about to kick off a carbon methodology task force to look through if we can come up with some sort of industry standard where we could start thinking about what does that look like. And I know that there's some research that's also been happening looking at that as well. But, you know, our initial, in terms of like where the big emission categories are, it's actually the user devices which have the biggest in terms of life cycle assessment.
And so that's what I'm kind of trying to ask, is I'm wondering if there's any governmental action. I know the journals are doing their best, but we have no control over our consumption, and it's being hidden. The user devices, most users don't even have a clue how this is just inflating and inflating. Have you heard any, like you said, it's so hidden. It's just so hidden. There's nothing we can really do.
I think from a governmental perspective, they're looking for the high carbon industries, which is transportation, it's oil, it's energy, it's paper, but it's not necessarily data services at this point. Although I know that they contribute about 2% of the global emissions, it is far less than sort of flight and aviation. So in terms of where carbon impacts are, you won't see that level of critique coming in, but I do think industry standards could really accelerate some of this, or at least make it transparent about what choices you have, at least in a journal perspective. I mean, I can't comment about your personal life, but you know, your journal perspective.
But yeah, I guess that's my point, is, you know, people are so concerned with recycling their bottles or their cans, but they can't control their data. And it just seems...
I just want to add that at the European Union level, there is a Craft Open Access project in which they are trying to actually have an infrastructure which will be sustainable, because one of the new larger impacts is actually impact of data sharing. So because we are stimulating data sharing, and there is a problem, where should we put this data? It's not for free, it's not sustainable, and how many servers do we need for that? There will be like a huge amount of data, but actually they are doing a lot of things to combine resources, to share resources between members of the European Union, which is something very relevant for Croatia also. We have some repositories which are shared in a European open access cloud. So we are using the same resources. And I think that is the thing that we try to promote in Europe and in Croatia, especially in Croatia because of the lack of resources, to try to convince more people to share those resources. In that way, less resources will be needed. So that is one way of doing it also. And they are also trying to measure the impact, the carbon footprints of all of that. So Joe, do you want to add something? Because I see that you are sharing some link in the...
Oh, I just posted the link of the D-Impact group that Rachel mentioned.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah. So I think there is a lot of things, and I see that Duncan wrote that actually the environmental impact of generative AI software processing is huge as well. So that is, AI is something which we still don't know how to... Oh, thank you, Krista. Krista had to go. Thank you, Krista, for your question. I think the use of AI tools is something which we will need to be adjusted to, just to set the recommendations and to be aware of ethical implications, but also of the impact of those softwares on environment. So I see that Joe Heyman has posted some questions. Perhaps perhaps would like to ask the question live. I see that.
I don't think she's still in the
No,
room
okay,
either.
sorry,
So take
because I can
take them without her.
Yes, I see that she wrote that using the SDG indicators for a separate discussion, using the SDG indicators to assess and match research with measurable impact to society. Yeah, that is an interesting question. There is something with what we are considering recently, especially because there is a strong movement of citizen science, and also the fact that society, who is funding the researchers, are actually wanted to for us to be impactful in that way also. So how do you comment on that?
I think for me, societal impact is yet to be defined. You know, the difficult thing is that there's not one way of defining it by a proxy measure. So, you know, you can think about policy citations. Well, some articles would be policy citations. We can also think about sort of like the Nobel Peace, the Nobel Prize, right? That's 20 to 50 to maybe even more years before you get recognized for that work that you've done. So, you know, there's timescales here which don't necessarily play very well in terms of, you know, critical emergencies and what does that mean. So I think it's a really nuanced area, and no one's really cracked the nut of to what does that mean and what proxy measures are going to really move the needle in a way that would be fair and equitable.
Yeah, that's true. That is something to be determined with, and to see whether the society will be satisfied with our reflection on that. I see that Duncan is making some comments. Do you want us to join for the end of this webinar, Duncan, live, if you are available? I see that he is commenting the carbon footprint of ChatGPT Midjourney. Hi, Duncan. Nice to see you.
Hello. Thanks for this session.
Our former EASE president. I would like to hear from you live your reflections on the topic, especially of using the carbon footprints of AI tools.
I have my forest in my room, offsetting my carbon in my room. But no, thanks for that. Yeah, my comments about the AI as well. I mean, yeah, like Rachel said, I suppose globally there are, you know, lots of things that contribute only a small amount, but then you take all of those small things and add them up, and suddenly you're already accounting for like 40-50% of everything. So I don't know, little things add up, and I think that's part of the problem of people, or well, understanding like what can we do, what can you do as an individual, what really matters. Like some things seem really trivial when you note them down, but lots of small things that are seemingly trivial add up across global action, and you know, it's all incremental. It's quite hard to change such a huge industry as well.
And I think it's also about prioritization. I mean, environmental impacts goes beyond just carbon. So if you're going to think about, you know, carbon or water or waste or any of those things,
yeah,
biodiversity impact, I mean, those are all on the agenda sort of that we're going to be addressing and calculating and trying to measure. But they're all very different. If you prioritize carbon, you have a different outcome than if you prioritize biodiversity. And so there are some inherent trade-offs that will sort of come up here, and when you're thinking about the industry and sort of the decarbonization or the net zero path.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working with my journal that I'm working with at the moment is an IVF journal, and they've recently published a paper on sustainability in IVF labs, and there's lots of initiatives there about, you know, experimenting with using fewer materials, and the amount of waste from IVF is quite huge. I try and use one less Petri dish per kind of session, and see if you can slowly reduce the amount of waste from there. So there's not just in publishing, but there are lots of other initiatives that are publishing adjacent in research.
Or that
Yes.
by being
and-
publishers, we can raise awareness of. That's the other piece, isn't it? That through our content, we have an ability to raise awareness of these advances and change, and to share those ideas so they can be used more widely by more people. That adding up of all the smaller efforts, Duncan, as you were saying, and that goes back to Rachel, what you were saying about getting all your staff involved. By getting all of them involved and all of them doing something, again, it's that additive effect, right? So I would definitely encourage people to not let the size of a thing.
Yeah, I would like to
get started.
I would like to add that, for example, our institution, because it's a faculty, we have now introduced virtual lab for our students, which is something also relevant to saving some resources. So I would like to thank you all very much for a very interesting discussion, because we have reached the end of today's webinar. I thank all participants for joining in. And I want to announce the next webinar, which is tomorrow on 2 p.m. UK time from EASE. It is an EASE Nordic webinar from our Nordic chapter, fostering research integrity by the promotion of equity, fairness, and diversity, which is something that is closely related to today's webinar, because we are covering SDGs on equal opportunities to all. So equity, diversity, and inclusion. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Joe, for sharing the results of the survey and your thoughts and the project for the STM roadmap. Thank you, Duncan, for joining us. It was lovely to see you all. And see you soon. See you tomorrow at the Nordic webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.